afternoon, everyone. You're listening to the CaMMVets Radio Report on WVOX 1460 and heard around the world on WVOX.com. This is Jack McGuirk with Ken Fraser bringing you this half-hour discussion of issues related to veterans and the active military. Now, here's Ken.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone listening to CaMMVets Media here on WVOX 1460 AM and CaMMVets means that we cover cadets, midshipmen, the military, and veterans proudly since 2008. And busy week. As soon as we got off the air, I checked my Twitter account and found out that Rick Pitino was going to St. John's.
Yeah.
The minute, I think that was when he announced it, and he's over there, a lot of fanfare for him. We really enjoyed our 3 years working with him, and wish him well. And then not 24 hours later, I think by the following morning, by lunchtime, Iona announced they hired Tobin Anderson to be the new coach.
Mm-hmm. And
Tobin Anderson, of course, led FDU in New Jersey to 2 wins in the NCAA tournament, and of course defeated Purdue, number 1 seed. And it turned out Iona had talked to him the last time they had a coaching vacancy when Tim Clues had retired, and they had talked to him, but they ended up hiring Rick Pitino. So they already knew him, and there was a relationship. That's why they could do it so quickly. Saturday, we were up at West Point. We caught the beginning of Army football practice. They have spring practice, and talked to Coach Munkin. May have a chance to play a little bit of that in the second half. Went to the West Point Band concert after that for about the second half. They had a interesting concert. And then yesterday, we were in White Plains, where I live, at White Plains High School for the Tri-State Engineering Expo, which I had attended in 2019, the last time they were able to hold it. They didn't hold it for 4 years due to COVID. But they were back. They had thousands of high school students and their parents there, and many demonstrations of engineering. They had a robotics demonstration, all those little carts that run across and can handle obstacles. And they had speakers. We're going to hear talk about women in engineering, and also how engineers really go through college and start their careers. So great job by the team from McLaren Engineering in New Jersey that were the key lead sponsors. Malcolm McLaren is the emeritus CEO of the company. We talked to a couple of West Point cadets there, and we have some talk with them. We're going to play the second half of the show. So it was a busy week, but Jack, tell us about what's happening in military news.
Alrighty. Well, another quick college. I noticed that you're on water Providence. Ed Cooley, who was the head coach there, he left to go coach at Georgetown, but they hired a new coach up at Providence, Kim English, who was previously coaching at George Mason.
Yeah, very well thought of new coach, but I think a lot of people were surprised at Ed Cooley, so well entrenched at Providence College. The program was doing so well. They were drawing huge crowds. The students were really backing the team, and they had success. They lost in the first round this year. They advanced in the NCAA tournament last year. So that was a surprise because Ed Cooley is a Rhode Island native, and to go to Georgetown, big challenge there. And maybe that's what he just wanted, was another challenge in his career. So we wish him well.
Indeed. Now, switching gears a little bit to what's happening in Ukraine, Russian President Vladimir Putin said Moscow plans to station tactical nuclear weapons in the neighboring Belarus. While there's no guarantee he will follow through on that plan, any nuclear signaling by Putin will cause concern to the West. 16 civilians have been killed and 59 people injured in Russian shelling across 8 regions of Ukraine, according to the Defense Forces of Ukraine. The Defense Forces said in a statement that 119 settlements had been shelled with various weapons, including mortars, tanks, artillery, multiple launch rocket systems, S-300 air defense missile system, Lancet UAVs, and Onyx cruise missiles. So Russia continuing to pound Ukraine with mortars and missiles and all sorts of weapons there.
It's awful, but again, there's a lot of debate about if Putin is backing what he's saying. Putting tactical nuclear weapons on the doorstep of NATO is a huge action that he might take, but the defense in NATO, the United States, and other allies have to take it seriously, and we'll see what the next move is.
Indeed. Now, this is kind of a scary story. Russia could have its most powerful and quiet nuclear attack submarines on persistent patrols off either U.S. coast in the next 2 years. This was according to the U.S. Northern Command, who told the Senate Armed Services Committee on Thursday. And that's Northcom Commander General Glenn Van Herk, in response to a question from Senator Joni Ernst, who's on the committee, on the threat of Chinese and Russian cruise missile submarines operating close to the U.S. He said that deployments of Russian Yasin nuclear cruise missile attack boats have been deploying more frequently, saying that the risk is absolutely increasing. Within the last year, Russia had also placed their Yasins in the Pacific, now not only in the Atlantic, but we also have them in the Pacific, and it's just a matter of time, probably a year or two before that's a persistent threat, 24 hours a day. And also known by their NATO reporting name, the Severodonetsk class, but the 13,800-ton Yasin-class attack boats are among the most capable submarines in the world. In particular, the 3 current boats in the class are capable of special quiet operations special quiet operations mode that makes them difficult to detect in the open ocean. And in 2018, the lead boat in the class, the Severodonetsk, evaded U.S. efforts to find it for weeks, according to press reports. And Navy officials have said that the service has become increasingly concerned with the efficacy of the Russian submarine force.
And Jack, is that a ballistic missile submarine, meaning that it has ICBMs, or is it an attack submarine?
It sounds like it's an attack submarine.
Okay.
But the Russians have recently delivered 2 strategic nuclear submarines to their fleet, a 24,000-ton Bory-class nuclear ballistic missile submarine, one of them. But
24,000 is a big submarine.
Yeah. And General Hook also emphasized the need for the U.S. to expand its operations in the Arctic, as Russia has modernized its assets in the region and China continues to push further north, saying that Russia has modernized their fleet of icebreakers and they've modernized their strategic defense along with the submarine forces. And China is sailing into the Arctic under the guise of research missions, but we know they're doing military operations, surveying the seabed, according to General Verhoek. So this is kind of some scary news there from the general.
Well, it's the trend. You wonder how much the Russians can really afford to deploy in their military, how they're able to pay for this, to build new nuclear submarines. Their economy is so small. To be able to support that is going to be a challenge for them. There are already reports of real shortages of ammunition and equipment that they might use against Ukraine. But it's really going back into a Cold War environment where you've got the Russians and the Chinese making threats. I mean, not really the Chinese yet, but they're stocking up and they have more capability. But the threats the Russians are making and describing the submarines that they can deploy is aggressive, and it's really a kind of, I mean, they call it a proxy war with Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
But you're seeing this is the side actions being taken, that they're increasing their means of deploying submarines against the NATO countries and the United States.
And last week, shifting to the Middle East now, a strike Thursday by a suspected Iranian-made drone killed the U.S. contractor and wounded 5 American troops and another contractor in northern Syria, according to the Pentagon. American forces said they retaliated soon after with precision airstrikes in Syria, targeting facilities used by groups affiliated with Iran's Revolutionary Guard, with activist groups saying the U.S. bombing killed at least 4 people. Now, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said in a statement that the American intelligence community had determined the drone was of Iranian origin, but offered no other immediate evidence to support the claim. Iran relies on a network of proxy forces throughout the Middle East to counter U.S. and Israel, and it's Israel is its enemy. But the Pentagon said 2 of the wounded service members were treated on site, while 3 others and the injured contractor were transported to medical facilities in Iraq. And we've talked about previously with Iranian drones how the Russians have been using Iranian drones in Ukraine. It was a drone strike in Syria, killing U.S. contractor and 5 of the troops, and the U.S. retaliated with those strikes.
Yeah, and what is it about? The United States has about 1,000 troops in Syria. You don't hear a lot about it, trying to be peacekeeping. But yeah, the use of drones is just expanding, and we see the big ones, but also the smaller drones. And Iran is manufacturing them and providing them to Russia is not a good scenario.
Absolutely. And China threatened serious consequences Friday after the United States Navy sailed a destroyer around the disputed Paracel Islands in the South China Sea for the second day in a row, in a move that Beijing claimed was a violation of sovereignty and security. Now, Thursday, after the U.S. sailed the USS Milius, which is a guided missile destroyer near the Paracel Islands, China said its Navy and Air Force had forced the American vessel away, which the U.S. Denies. And on Friday, the U.S. sailed the ship again in the vicinity of the islands, which are occupied by China, but also claimed by Taiwan and Vietnam as part of what it calls a freedom of navigation operation, challenging the requirements from all three nations requiring either advance notification or permission before a military vessel sails by. So increased tensions are in the South China Sea with the USS Milius passing by the Paracel Islands.
Well, the U.S. Navy is going to sail where it deems appropriate and part of its mission to sail and show presence. The question is, what is actually the international law, and whether what you described really is in any way binding or something the United States has recognized. I kind of doubt it.
We'll have to keep an eye on that story. You've been listening to the CaMMVets Radio Report on WVOX AM 1460 and heard around the world on WVOX.com. We'll be right back after this brief Fox News break, so stay tuned.